7.01 Rising Expectations in Waning Empires. New Unit, New Ideas. Unit Introduction. The Dawn of the 20th Century. The world seemed to be getting smaller and smaller at the beginning of the 20th century. Canals made travel from one part of the world to another faster and safer. Soon, people would be traveling at unimaginable speeds through the air as well. In southeastern and central Europe, in India and China, and in parts of Africa, people developed a strong sense of nationalism, of attachment to their own country. And as they became more aware of their rights, they demanded freedom and self-rule. Lesson Introduction: Rising Expectations in Waning Empires. In the late 1800s, great empires sprawled across much of the globe, but things were changing within those empires. Nationalists launched struggles for self-rule and independence. Political leaders demanded equality and liberty for their peoples. They claimed the same natural rights Enlightenment thinkers had written about over a century earlier. The once dominant empires could not resist these powerful forces. In the decades ahead, the politics and maps of the world would be changed forever. When you finish the lesson, you should be able to analyze excerpts of Gandhi's philosophy of nonviolent resistance, describe the role of nationalism in changing imperialism in the early 20th century, explain the reasons for discontent in old empires in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, identify Franz Joseph as in the methods he used in trying to maintain his empire, identify Sun Yat-sen and his role in Chinese independence, recognize changes to the maps of empires in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, recognize the Serbs as an example of ethnic groups whose nationalism led to independence movements within the Ottoman Empire, summarize Gandhi's development as a champion of Indian independence from Britain, and recognize the city of Vienna and the cultural attractions it offers. Nationalism. Nationalism is an ideology and movement that promotes the interests of a nation as in a group of people, especially with the aim of gaining and maintaining the nation's sovereignty or self-governance over its homeland. It also encourages pride in national achievements, and it closely is linked to patriotism. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the new force of nationalism began to motivate many subject peoples living in old empires. Nationalists did not feel allegiance to their imperial masters. Instead, they felt a sense of belonging and loyalty to their own country, nation, culture, and traditions. Nationalists sought self-rule, freedom, and independence instead of imperial rule. The Old Ottoman Empire. 4 regions of the Old Ottoman Empire: Southeastern Europe, Asia Minor, North Africa, and the Middle East. The Ottoman Empire shrinks. In 1683, the Ottomans had advanced to the very gates of Vienna before they were defeated or turned back by the Austrians. Since that time, slowly but surely, the Ottoman Empire began to shrink, and various subject peoples struggled for their independence and freedom. In southeastern Europe, the Ottoman Empire faced a particularly stiff challenge from nationalists. The ethnic group, the Serbs, fought for and won their independence from imperial rule in 1878. Ottoman troops advanced to the gates of Vienna in 1683. Since that time, the empire seemed to be in retreat. The Ottomans would lose the territory of Hungary next. By 1812, the Ottomans had lost 2 large chunks of land in the north and east that bordered the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. More territories had slipped from Ottoman control by 1878. 2 European nations that had emerged as independent countries were Serbia and Greece. Serbia and Greece maintain their identities and are still independent countries. Serbia occupies the same territory as that liberated from the Ottomans in 1878. Greece has expanded beyond the territory liberated from the Ottomans. The sick man of Europe. The Ottoman Empire was in decline, known to the other great powers of the day as the sick man of Europe. In fact, most of its remaining territory was not in Europe, but in North Africa and the Middle East. Modern-day countries in each of those regions are Egypt, Libya, and Tunisia in North Africa, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Israel in the Middle East. Ultimately, the Ottoman Empire shrunk to Asia Minor, with only a small toehold in Europe. Turkey is the country occupying that part of the world today. Franz Joseph. Franz Joseph ascended the imperial Habsburg throne in 1848. Immediately, he had to put down a revolt against his rule in Hungary. He executed the leaders of the revolt. He split his empire into Austrian and Hungarian parts and set up a parliament in Budapest. Habsburg throne. Later in Joseph's ruling, he maintained Habsburg power in his far-flung empire by compromising with his Hungarian subjects. He granted them their own parliament and constitution, or he created the dual monarchy. He was less successful in winning over the Czechs, Slovaks, Croats, and Slovenes of his empire. These people were collectively known as Slavs or Slavic people. The Habsburgs would eventually have trouble with the Serbs or Serbia and would plunge the nations into a world war. Mohandas Gandhi. Mohandas Gandhi led India to independence from Britain and is one of the world's great historical figures. He was the champion of India's independence movement from Britain. He was raised in India as a traditional Hindu, but was educated as a lawyer in England, where he adopted many Western ways. He first practiced as a lawyer and worked for the rights of the Indian people in South Africa. The weapons he used to fight against injustice and oppression were nonviolence and/or passive resistance. He did not believe in retaliation. Sun Yat-sen, known as the father of the Chinese Revolution. Sun Yat-sen was angered by the presence and dominance of foreigners in China, the treaty ports, and the weakness of China's Manchu rulers. In 1911, he became the first president of the new Chinese Republic. Imperialism and nationalism. Through imperialism, countries are taken over, while through nationalism, the people take back their rights, freedom, and country from the imperialists. Nationalism is a belief that your country is the best. It is excessive pride in one's homeland. Across the globe, nationalism challenged the power of imperialism in the early 20th century. Nationalists from Serbia won their freedom from the Ottomans in 1878. The Habsburgs had to concede some self-rule to the Hungarians. The nonviolent resistance of Gandhi threatened Britain's hold on India. And Chinese novelists drove Western imperialists out of the treaty ports on the coast. You must not lose faith in humanity. Humanity is an ocean. If a few drops of the ocean are dirty, the ocean does not become dirty. Mahatma Gandhi. The end.